Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Stand Up, where I've got the brilliant Bill Boyle. Bill B in D.C. joined me last night. We were live on Substack and YouTube. In case you want to watch it, you can do that right now. YouTube.com/StandUpWithPete. Really great conversation. As always, we covered a lot. If you want to jump to it, it starts at 26 minutes. But I've got your news, headlines, and clip show like I do most days, and I want to get right to it. Can't do any of it without your support, and man, have I felt it. Thank you so much for everybody who's shown up for me through this terrible car accident that my parents were in. I am back home, downstate, for the first time in 2 weeks. I'm sure I'll be heading back up in a few days, but gotta help out my daughter Ava, who's 21 today. Happy 21st birthday on the 21st. It's her golden birthday, and she is shooting a short film, and I am a PA. I'm on the crew. I'm driving. I'm an extra. So I'll be doing that with her for 2 days, and I may or may not be able to put out a show tomorrow and or Friday, and I can't host the Hangout tonight because I will be with her on her birthday eve. So I will see you either tomorrow or Saturday. At some point this weekend, I will absolutely host a Hangout because one is sorely needed, but not on my daughter's birthday, not here on the 21st. So we will forego it for this evening, but get back to it either tomorrow or Saturday, depending on the plan. All right. Well, I've got a lot to talk about, a lot of news, a lot of headlines, so let's get to it. Starting with the fact that Rip One Van Winkle's plane Air Force One had to turn around on its way to Switzerland last night. Apparently it had an electrical problem, and then they got on the other plane. There's two of them, and then they went back, and who knows what happened or why it happened. I'm not going to make any comments about it, but it did happen last night. He may or may not be late to Davos on purpose. Who knows? Don't know. After a deadly train crash in Spain, authorities struggled to identify those killed. 41 people dead, and so an investigation continues. Spain's worst railway disaster since 2013, shaking a country that takes great pride in its high-speed rail system, the largest in Europe. Yesterday marked the first year of President Amenchia's second term, and it is as crazy as ever. We'll be talking about it a lot, of course, obviously. The New York Times had a story that he gained or made about a little over $1 billion in his first year as president, the second time, and everybody knows, including the New York Times says, it's probably a lot more than that, but that's all that they could officially track. I wonder how much of it was just from pardons that people paid for. And the latest in a series of the United States military boarding and taking control of oil tankers. It's the seventh now connected with Venezuela yesterday as the regime continues its efforts to take control of the oil in the South American country. U.S. Southern Command said in a social media post that U.S. forces apprehended the motor vessel Saguita without incident, that the tanker was operated in defiance of Donnie D. Cup's established quarantine of sanctioned vessels in the Caribbean. Yesterday, he also said that the only thing Somalis were good at were being pirates, but, I mean, he's the official government pirate. So, I don't know. Seems a little bit hypocritical, but we don't care about hypocrisy anymore. In Minnesota, apparently the Justice Department has now subpoenaed top Minnesota officials as part of a criminal investigation into their response to the regime's hostile immigration crackdown in the North Star State. The offices of the governor, Tim Walz, and the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, and Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, all Democrats, of course, received subpoenas, and so we'll continue to watch what's happening there. Also in Minnesota, federal immigration agents bashed open a door and detained a U.S. citizen in his home at gunpoint without warrant, then let him out into the streets in his underwear in sub-freezing conditions. So that's totally normal and humane and legal, you know, nothing to see there. Federal judge in the Eastern District of Virginia barred Lindsay Halligan from continuing to identify herself as a U.S. attorney in all legal matters in a fiery 18-page order on Tuesday. That's pretty crazy and pretty good. Another win. Negotiations between Congressman James Comer of Kentucky, the Republican chairman of the Oversight Committee, and Bill and Hillary Clinton over their refusal to testify in his panel's Jeffrey Epstein investigation broke down yesterday, hours before a scheduled vote to hold the couple in contempt of Congress. So who knows what's going to happen there. The Epstein files aren't going away, at least not for the Clintons, because that's what they're mostly cared about. Netflix said it's now going to pay all cash for the $83 billion deal to acquire major parts of Warner Brothers Discovery in a bid to thwart Paramount's challenge. All cash. $83 billion, all cash. Who's got that lying around? I don't even understand how you can have that in cash. Someone explain that to me. The majority of the Supreme Court justices appeared skeptical of a Hawaii law that restricts carrying concealed weapons onto private property. Oh, all right. Well, I hadn't heard about that case. And here's a couple pieces of good news. Fewer people are jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. That's right. The Golden Gate Bridge, the iconic span that hangs between San Francisco Bay and the Pacific Ocean, has been the site of more than 2,000 confirmed suicide leaps since it opened in 1937. For decades, the death toll hovered around 30 a year. But now, after the completion of a $224 million project to install stainless steel nets below the bridge, the number of suicides has noticeably dropped. There were none in the second half of 2025. All right. Stainless steel net doesn't sound like something that would be fun to jump into either. I must be missing something. But that's good news. How about that? And in Illinois, a town's parks department and its residents rallied to find mates for 2 local swans, which I thought was a really thoughtful project for people to do. And that's the kind of good thing we can all do. It seems small. It seems nothing, but not to those swans. I bet it means a lot to them. They should have gotten on some kind of an app or something, but they didn't need it. The people of their small town came to their aid and helped them fall in love. And you can too. I don't know what that means, but doing good things, you know? All right, those are the headlines. Let's get to the clips that I've gathered from yesterday. Let's start in Minnesota, where the chief of police in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, Mark Burley, stood with many of the other law enforcement leaders in the Minneapolis area yesterday to make a statement you don't often hear from law enforcement. So you're not going to like and agree with everything that he says here, maybe, but this is a pretty bold statement that matters a lot.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mark Burley, Police Chief of the City of Brooklyn Park. Behind me is a bunch of amazing police chiefs that are here in support of a very short but very important message that we want to share with you. What you won't hear from any of us today is rhetoric of abolish ICE or that there shouldn't be immigration enforcement. The truth is, immigration enforcement is necessary for our national security and for local security. But how it's done is extremely important. In fact, we have a long history of working exceptionally well with our federal partners, including ICE agents, and we have seen the best of them perform their job extremely well in the past. With that said, recently, as the last 2 weeks, we, as law enforcement community, have been receiving endless complaints about civil rights violations in our streets from U.S. citizens. What we're hearing is they're being stopped in traffic stops or on the street with no cause and being forced to demand paperwork to determine if they are here legally. As this went on over the past 2 weeks, we started hearing from our police officers the same complaints as they fell victim to this while off duty. Every one of these individuals is a person of color who has had this happen to them. In Brooklyn Park, one particular officer that shared her story with me was stopped as she passed ICE going down the roadway. When they boxed her in, they demanded her paperwork, of which she's a U.S. citizen and clearly would not have any paperwork. When she became concerned about the rhetoric and the way she was being treated, she pulled out her phone. In an attempt to record the incident, the phone was knocked out of her hands, prevented her from recording it. The officer had their guns drawn during this interaction. And after the officer became so concerned, they were forced to identify themselves as a Brooklyn Park police officer in hopes of slowing the incident and de-escalating the incident down. The agents then immediately left after hearing this, making no other comments, no other apologies, just got in their vehicles and left. I wish I could tell you that this was an isolated incident. In fact, many of the chiefs standing behind me have similar incidents with their off-duty officers. This isn't just important because it happened to off-duty police officers, but what it did do is we know that our officers know what the Constitution is, they know what right and wrong is, and they know when people are being targeted, and that's what they were. If it is happening to our officers, it pains me to think of how many of our community members are falling victim to this every day. It has to stop.
But what can they do? What will they do? It does have to stop, but there has to be action as well, of course. And hopefully we'll see it. He doesn't want to end ICE, but the mayor of New York, Zohran Mamdani, he was on The View, and, well, he does.
I want to know where you come down on abolishing ICE and if you believe that ICE has any legitimate law enforcement role.
You know, I am in support of abolishing ICE, and I'll tell you why. Because what we see is an entity that has no interest in fulfilling its stated reason to exist. We're seeing a government agency that is supposed to be enforcing some kind of immigration law, but instead what it's doing is terrorizing people no matter their immigration status, no matter the facts of the law, no matter the facts of the case. And I'm tired of waking up every day and seeing a new image of someone being dragged out of a car, dragged out of their home, dragged out of their life. What we need to see is humanity. And there is a way to care about immigration in this city and in this country with a sense of humanity. What we're seeing from ICE is not it, and we have not seen that from them in a long, long time.
All right, one of the lawyers who has stepped up and representing all kinds of people who are victims of the federal government's abuse, immigration issues, and more is a guy named James Cook. And he was on ABC News yesterday with Selena Wang. I thought this was an interesting couple of minutes that I wanted to share because there's a lot of information here that's good.
And defense officials say 1,500 active duty Army paratroopers are now on standby for a possible deployment to Minnesota. That's in response to anti-ICE protests. It comes as Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says authorities have arrested 3,000 what she calls, quote, criminal illegal aliens in Minneapolis in the past 6 weeks. For more, let's bring in attorney James Cook. James, thank you so much for joining us. You are in Minnesota offering free legal assistance. What are you hearing on the ground?
We need not just legal assistance for the people who are being detained immigrants, but we also need legal assistance for the ICE watchers, for instance, and then the people that are helping the immigrants as well. Once they get detained or once they're released from detention. And then myself, I've been involved in organizing a group of attorneys to sort of tackle the problem, to make sure that we can file things on behalf of detainees and prevent the deportations.
And James, how frequently are you seeing U.S. citizens being detained by ICE?
It's more frequent. I think that in the beginning when I got into this, it was originally some of my neighbors, and then they'd call me and say, hey, so and so got taken by ICE, and that was probably just after Thanksgiving. And then as we got into the new year, that's when we started seeing the frequency of people getting taken by ICE, to kind of tick up. And now over the last week, it's been more and more U.S. citizens. That is not just U.S. citizens, people that are detainees with valid U.S. credentials, but also protesters. And we've also had an issue, the complication of Native Americans who've been taken by the government.
Right. And there have been anecdotes of people saying they were carrying their proper identification and it still didn't do anything for them. I mean, what is your advice to people if they are stopped by ICE?
So what we're telling people now, especially the group of attorneys that I'm with, is number one, keep our information with you, right? Write our number on your arm. We've given them several numbers to write. Write those numbers on your arm. Also, make sure that someone in your family or someone that you know has your name, your date of birth, your country of origin, and also your A number, because that's how we can find you in the system. Number one, we can find you in the system that way, and then we're also developing a template to be able to file a writ of habeas corpus. So that is the information, and that's how you should do it. It doesn't seem like ICE is really honoring the fact that people have constitutional rights in the U.S. I mean, they're taking people regardless of their citizenship status at this point.
Well, James Cook, thank you so much for keeping us posted on what's happening on the ground.
All right, there you go. There's a few clips related to what's happening in Minnesota. Now let's go to what's happening in the rest of the world, specifically with our relationship with Europe, which seems to be deteriorating very quickly, not to mention Canada. Let's go to the Prime Minister of Canada, who was in Davos, Switzerland yesterday. A lot of people referencing this statement or this speech from Mark Carney. Bill Boyle says it was one of the best he'd heard. Here's a clip from it.
To help solve global problems, we're pursuing variable geometry. In other words, different coalitions for different issues based on common values and interests. So on Ukraine, we're a core member of the Coalition of the Willing and one of the largest per capita contributors to its defense and security. On Arctic sovereignty, we stand firmly with Greenland and Denmark and fully support their unique right to determine Greenland's future. Our commitment to NATO's Article 5 is unwavering. So we're working with our NATO allies, including the Nordic-Baltic 8, to further secure the alliance's northern and western flanks, including through Canada's unprecedented investments in over-the-horizon radar, in submarines, in aircraft, and boots on the ground, boots on the ice.
All right. Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney. Now we go to the Prime Minister of France. It's Emmanuel Macron, who was wearing weird glasses. Did we ever learn why?
But we do prefer respect to bullies. We do prefer science to plotism. And we do prefer rule of law to brutality. We have a place where rule of law and predictability is still the rule of the game. And my guess is that it is largely underpriced by the market. Having a place like Europe, which sometimes is too slow, for sure, and needs to be reformed, for sure, but which is predictable, loyal, and where you know that the rule of the game is just the rule of law, it's a good place.
The rule of law? There you go. Emmanuel Macron. He had an eye condition. That's why he was wearing the glasses. So, yeah, he's all right. All right, let's go to Matthew O'Toole. He's a member of the United Kingdom Parliament.
We make a mistake when we talk about Donald Trump as if he were some kind of normal US president. This man is a madman. It's scary that it has taken up until now for European leaders and indeed Prime Minister Starmer to stand up to this individual, to say clearly to him, no, this is completely unacceptable. We've seen grotesque actions, including, of course, what's happened in Gaza, but we've seen ever more grotesque, preposterous things. His humiliation of President Zelensky in the Oval Office, his actions in Venezuela. Leaders across the world, including the EU and the UK, need to be clear with Trump that there will be consequences, economic and trade consequences, to be clear, Mr. Speaker, for threatening an independent, sovereign state in this way. He cannot and must not get away with it.
Right. Now we're talking. That's what we need. All right, let's listen to a Danish member of parliament at the EU gathering, and he told Trump to fuck off, and then he got scolded. You'll hear him speak a little bit more Danish and then get scolded, so it's kind of worth it, I guess.
Let me put this in words you might understand. Mr. President, fuck off. Det var næsten sådan ordene lød, da jeg for et år siden stod på den selv samme talerstol og sagde meget klart, at hvis Trump...
I'm sorry, colleague, this is against our rules. As much as you might feel, or the room might feel in this, we have clear rules about cuss words, language that is inappropriate in this room. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it is unacceptable, even if you might have strong political feelings about this.
No swearing. Stop telling the American president to fuck off. Wow, that was awesome. All right, now let's go to Scott Bessent. He was on, I think, CNBC yesterday, telling everybody not to retaliate to America's tariffs and hostile actions. Don't do anything, anybody. Again, Bill Boyle and I talk about this. This is completely idiotic. This guy is absolutely insane, Scott Bessent. Listen to him.
4 years in, the Europeans are still financing the war against themselves.
All right. Let's talk about...
But Joe, what I do want to say is, same thing that I said after Liberation Day on April 2nd, everyone take a deep breath, do not escalate, do not escalate. And President Trump has a strategy here. Hear him out, and then everything will be fine.
All right. There you go. Everything will be just fine, I'm sure. Also at Davos was the governor of California, which is the fourth or fifth largest economy in the world. Of course, I'm sure he's running for president as well. And you can't hear this audio as well because there's a scrum of people talking to him, but I think it's audible. So I decided to share it with you because he had a lot of good things to say. I know he's been getting a lot of grief lately for a stupid interview he did with Ben Shapiro. That grief is deserved, but I thought this was good.
Been doing. The Europeans should decide for themselves what to do. But one thing they can't do is what they've been doing. And they've been playing. This guy is playing folks for fools. And it's embarrassing.
Europeans think this is diplomacy and this will ultimately
this is
work.
Diplomacy with Donald Trump? He's a T-Rex. You mate with him or he devours you. One or the other.
And Europe's being
people
devoured?
need to stand. No, the Europeans could be if they continue to put down this path and process. They need to stand tall, stand firm, stand united. Well, look, this a year ago we should have been having this conversation, and they didn't. Okay, and now you're paying the price. Exactly what anyone objective observer would have anticipated we'd be where we are today.
What do you think is your underlying response to lead to the end of the European Union?
Well, I don't want to be hyperbolic about it, but this guy's a wrecking ball. I hope people are waking up to what we're dealing with. This is code red. I mean, you guys are still playing by all set of rules. Everybody, the globe is, with this guy. He's unmoored. It's the law of the jungle. It's the rule of dawn. And I hope it's dawning on the world what we're up against. I mean, this is serious. This guy he's not mad. He's very intentional, but he's unmoored and he's unhinged, and it requires. The goal is whatever he wants it to be. The goal is the world in his image.
What would your
He's a
advice?
narcissist. I mean, it's no advice. Common sense. Why don't folks do what they say publicly, what they're saying in private? Why don't they just simply do what they know is right? I mean, everybody's talking behind his back. They're laughing at him. Meanwhile, they're sucking up to him. It's embarrassing. I mean, you're modeling behavior for our kids, generations of folks. This is not diplomacy. This is stupidity.
Not diplomacy, it's stupidity. He's scolding our foreign allies for not going harder against us, it sounds like. It's crazy to hear American governors, Americans just look at America and say that we're the bad guys, that we're the threat, but that's exactly what the case is. That's exactly where we are, and we have to do everything we can to resist it, to stop it, to admit it, to acknowledge it. This is where we've arrived at. It's scary. I'm glad to be on this journey with you, holding your hand along the way, and you holding mine for sure. Jimmy Kimmel, very funny last night, so I wanted to share a little bit of his monologue. I always like to do some laughs here at the end of the news and the clip show.
I have a confession to make. I spent the whole day yesterday judging Trump on the content of his character and the color of his skin. Neither verdict was good. What a weekend for Trump. You really almost have to hand it to him. He can do so much damage in one 3-day weekend. I don't know if anybody has ever done more. Every country hates us now. It's official. All of them hate us. We are the Omarosa of the world. He is so angry about getting snubbed for the Nobel Peace Prize, he may literally declare war against Scandinavia, the happiest people on earth. But not anymore. On Sunday, Trump sent the following threatening text message to the Norwegian Prime Minister. It said, "Dear Jonas, considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace, although it will always be predominant, but can now think about what is good and proper for the United States of America. I've done more for NATO than any other person since its founding, and now NATO should do something for the United States. The world is not secure unless we have complete and total control of Greenland. Thank you, President DJT." That's right. He's done more for NATO than any person ever, and now he's going to destroy it. He's Sharknado. Now, there are so many embarrassing and deeply sad and insecure things about that text. I really could spend the whole night dissecting it, but How about him admitting this in writing? Our president sent a text to the leader of another country, which, by the way, is already a weird thing. The idea is just typing out a bitchy little message to the prime minister of Norway, a message that explicitly says, since you didn't give me the Peace Prize, I'm thinking about taking Greenland away. It's unheard of. There's nothing to compare it to in the history of humankind. It's like we armed a real housewife with nuclear weapons. This man is crashing the plane because the stewardess didn't bring him a bag of peanuts, okay? This is what happens to children who get anything they want. This is how they grow up. President Veruca Salt. I want Greenland. I want it now. All because he didn't get a little medal around his neck.
He's such a baby, is what he said next, I think. All right, there you go. Kimmel last night, very funny. And now it's time to get to my guest, the conversation. That is with Bill Boyle. Businessman in Washington, D.C., owns and operates parking garages. Also a student of history. Very well-connected guy and real good at talking. We love Bill. We always love when he joins the conversation. He is not here to be a pundit. He's not trying to outrage you or make money or sell subscriptions the way the rest of us are. And I think that incentive or lack of it matters, makes him more credible and more honest in a lot of ways, because so much of what everybody is doing is trying to get subscriptions and sell ads and all of that. I'm not doing that. This show is ad-free. I can't do it without you. I can't bring on guests like Bill without you. So thank you very much for supporting me. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. Hope to see you in Las Vegas, by the way. I didn't plug that yet. Today it is Pod Jam 3 in Las Vegas, April 9th through 12th. I hope that you will make plans to join us. It's going to be a party. All right, let's do it right now with Bill B in D.C. If you're not following on Blue Sky, you should now at Bill B in D.C. Learn more about him in the show notes. Here we go. Hello and Boyle to you. That's Bill Boyle, everybody. Bill B in D.C. joins me here on Tuesday night at 7 p.m., want to talk with you about a lot of things. Thank you very much for joining me. Always appreciate your insight, perspective on everything that's happening in this insane world and version of America.
Oh, happy to be here.
All right. Well, let's start with the fact that we are 1 year today into Trump 2, the regime. What are the differences between the first nightmare and the second nightmare, the way you see it, or what do you think of this first year?
I mean, the two things have changed. Number one is that Trump is much older, much weirder, much less in touch with actual real life. He also, I would say, has no regard anymore about the future. In the first term, he had some sense that he had to win again in order to protect himself. This time around, I think he's so old and he's so weird and he's so nuts that he doesn't care anymore. He figures he's done and he's protected. So he's different in that respect. On the other side, he also doesn't have anyone around him to mitigate his worst instincts. And that actually helped him a lot in his first term. He had a lot of people around him who said, whoa, hold on. There's norms to be observed and we have to be careful. And so he got the benefit of saying wild shit, but then things sort of worked okay. And his policies were, bad, but they weren't catastrophic. Where what we have now is that all those people who sort of slowed him down and kept him from doing crazy shit are gone. And the people that are still with him are the real lunatics, the Stephen Millers. Even Bessent is such a gigantic step down from the Trump's first Treasury Secretary in his first term. I mean, I hated those guys. But this group is loathsome, and worse than loathsome, they're inept. It's a bunch of evil clowns running things. And so if you combine Trump's sort of disconnect from the real world, and the people who are actually day-to-day running things, it's a really rough and brutal situation we're in after a year.
I wonder how much getting away with so much emboldens anyone, much less this malignant narcissist. Someone shared yesterday, I'll never, ever get over the fact that he was reelected after this and showed an image of the Capitol on January 6th. I think that's a good point. Also, so there's that, what he's gotten away with and how that's emboldened him, and the Supreme Court and how they've emboldened him. Do you think those two things contribute to how few restrictions there are on his megalomania?
No, I mean, I think the Supreme Court has helped him out in some ways, but in a lot of other ways, the courts have pushed him back. This is Jamel Bowie, different figures that I think are very different people politically, but I think agree on this. I think they're smart too. Like guys like Jamel Bowie, Brian Beutler. There's various other people. Michael Cohen's another example of this. Our friends at Talking Points Memo, people that I think who I really trust. John Gans would be another one. All these folks are like, yes, this is bad, but it's not working. And I think that the Trump people want everyone to go, oh shit, they're just running wild and they're winning. And what are we going to do? But actually, they wanted to put the National Guard into Illinois and the court said, fuck off, you can't do it. And the Illinois governor said, okay, that's done. And it was over. They don't have the National Guard in Minneapolis. They would love to, but they can't because the judge said no. California, same. Trump is running wild where it's easy for the executive branch to run wild. Wherever it's difficult for the executive branch to run wild, I think that he wants to sort of jawbone his way. He wants to clickbait his way into a dictatorship. I don't think it's working very well. Now, the country isn't working very well, and a lot of injustice and bullshit is going on. But I don't see these guys really doing all that well. I think that they are stumbling from one disaster to the next, and the only thing that's keeping them going is that any one of these catastrophes hasn't blown up in their face yet. Yeah, well, I don't know what that looks like exactly, but invading Greenland would be a catastrophe. Do you think that would? Very definitely it would. I mean, the Europeans, by the way, there's the bazooka, which I'll let your listeners look up. But the European bazooka is basically it's a whole thing, and I haven't really read enough to talk about it knowledgeably. But the bottom line is Europeans will start to pull out of treasuries. The Europeans can, or other major holders of our debt could do great damage to the dollar by pulling out of treasuries. And that is what the bazooka is. It's like a nuclear option, an economic, and it's, there's a reason why they haven't done it yet. I think it's fair to say it's mutually bad, but they don't have any options. Well, here's I think there's a couple of things going on here that need to be looked at, which is the Europeans still need the U.S. for Ukraine, less than they did, but it still would be a very different war if the U.S. suddenly pulled out. There's a theory that this is really what Greenland is about on at least one level, which is Trump legally can't pull out of Ukraine, but if he can get the NATO to pull out from him, then he gets something that Vance and Stephen Miller and himself certainly want in the long run. So Europe is sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place in the sense that, look, they need to win the war in Ukraine. That war needs to be won to buttress European security. Trump can screw them on that, at least in the short term. So I think he has leverage. At the same time, the war in Ukraine is not as important as the place in the dollar is in the world. It's just not, as much as I love Ukraine and support it. And if the Europeans are pushed far enough, that's what they're going to do. And I think they have to. Carney the Premier of Canada gave a great speech today where he basically said we live in a war where the rules have been tossed out. The rule of law has been tossed out. International law has been tossed out. And nations need to start acting accordingly. And that means that, that Canada has to treat the U.S. as a potentially dangerous power. And if the U.S. pushes, it has to push back. And I think that that's true of Europe. I think it's true of Denmark. I think it's true of Greenlanders. And, things that people never talk about. It blows me away. Let's talk about Greenland. The United States in 1917. I have a new cat, by the way, if you hear smashing in the background. Oh, really? You got a cat? Little cat. Wait, hold on. Oh, he's hiding. Oh. Anyway, he's pulling down stuff in my office. That's all right. I love it. Yeah, he's very cute. I'll try to grab him if he gets close enough. I want to see him. But in 1917, the United States signed a treaty that gave the United States extensive basing rights in Greenland. It also gave us the U.S. Virgin Islands, which were the Danish Virgin Islands before that. And we paid $25 million for the Virgin Islands. And part of that deal was we gave up any rights to Greenland. explicitly, without question, no kidding. And so this whole thing, it's really insane that the U.S. talks about this like as if there's some sort of – wait, hold on. Here we go. The U.S. talks about this. Here we go, Pete. Here's your cat.
Oh, yes. This is – who is this?
This is Milo. So
hi, Milo.
Milo is also super pissed off about Greenland, as you can see, and kind of fascinated with his own face. All right, get out of here.
Milo's beautiful.
So, anyway, like it's an insane thing that we literally signed a treaty not to do what we're doing in Greenland right now, and on top of which, because of World War II or World War I, actually, we have basing rights all over Greenland. So, like what Trump is doing with Greenland, it makes no sense from a security point of view. It makes it violates treaties the United States signed. And it ruins one of the greatest alliances in world history for keeping the peace. And I will tell you, though, how often in the media have you seen mentions of that treaty? Almost none, right? How many times have you heard about the Virgin Islands being swapped for our rights to that?
Yeah, I just heard about that today, yeah.
Right. I mean, it's just not – and this kind of gets at sort of the decadence of our media. That should be front and center. The United States signed a treaty, said they wanted to do this. End of story. Like we paid for the Virgin Islands. We gave up our rights to Greenland. End of story. We signed a freaking treaty. And yet we're trying to coerce in the way the Germans tried to coerce Czechoslovakia out of the Sudetenland. We're trying to coerce Europe into giving up Greenland. It's disgusting. It's very much, by the way the fascists in Germany saw foreign policy. Stephen Miller says, basically the law of the jungle has always been the law. That's bullshit. That is completely not true.
That?
International law has existed for thousands of years. And it's just weird to me that it's not being put that way in our media, that we are violating a treaty we signed. We are, by the way, not asking, the Trump administration isn't asking Greenlanders at all what they want. 85% of Greenlanders don't want to be part of the United States. And the Trump administration is saying, we're just going to buy it from Denmark, as if the people that live there mean nothing, which in reality to the Trump administration, they don't mean anything.
Right.
They don't care.
A lot of smart people are trying to figure out what is behind this. What is the ambition? And there's a lot of really interesting speculation about, Bobby Jones and his ego, about wanting to expand, put his name on things. There's some investment interest, people working in the Trump universe, Project 2025 talked about it, value in terms of minerals, strategic importance for national security. A lot of people say, but that sounds stupid because of A, NATO alliance, and B, we already have troops there and we could do whatever we want there in terms of national security. And we don't see Russia as a threat. We seem to see them, the government, at least the Trump regime, as an ally. So I feel like speculating on the ambitions is almost, and it's true often of this man, it's almost a waste of time, but I'll entertain it for a moment. I mean, how do you talk about the interest and ambitions that this regime has in Greenland?
So there's layers to this. Trump is surrounded by people, not surrounded, but there's a certain number of people in Trump's orbit who have been obsessed with Greenland for a long time. Weirdly enough, not so shocking to most, Elon Musk's grandfather, before he decided to move to apartheid Africa, he was part of this weird sort of semi-fascist group in Canada that wanted to create a North American empire that included Greenland. And they put out maps showing the United States, Canada, and Greenland as one thing. Musk certainly is one source of this. Another one is Ralph Lauder, who apparently has some sort of mining interest there. And he's been friends with Trump forever, and he's been pouring that in Trump's ear the whole time. I think also that Trump has this very weird, it's not even an 18th century mentality, because in the 18th century, in the imperialistic era, they actually looked and said, where are the resources? Let's get them and take them out. Greenland's resources exist, and they're going to be incredibly hard to get out. It's why they're not being taken out now. They're not viable. But Trump in his head, he wants his Louisiana Purchase. And people have sort of brought this up to him, and now he's in it both feet. I think ultimately it's just a will to power by a very damaged and weird guy who has unfortunately been given a lot of power for the next couple of years.
Right. Well, we'll see if he's able to be there for the next couple of years. He's on his way now to Davos. You can feel when he leaves the country. It's like Luke and Vader, and other world leaders there, and especially European leaders. Anything you want to speculate about what happens at this summit with all these?
He's going to throw a grenade into the middle of it. That's my guess. I don't know if you watched his press conference today.
I didn't. I was driving all day, and I saw clips, or I read clips about it. It sounded, somebody said that watches a lot of him for their work, a reporter said, I've seen him speak lots of times. This is top 10 crazy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just, I mean, sundowning. That's what's going on. This is a 70-year-old man, 79-year-old man who you wouldn't let him walk across the street on his own. He's a mess. And the Republicans are not going to do anything about it. But he clearly is just sort of lashing out in a bunch of weird ways. In any functional, if the GOP was at all functional, they would 25th Amendment him today for mental inability.
Yeah, say more about the current Republican Party. You know, sometimes I think about if just there were 4 senators, if there were just 4 Republican senators to get on board with the rest of the Democrats in the Senate, if you know, it would take very few Republicans to stand up to what we're seeing. Say a little bit more about that.
Well, these guys look around and they see that a bunch of Republicans, like Cassidy, for instance, is now being challenged by a MAGA person that Trump put up to it.
Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy.
Right.
Yeah.
And they have seen this again and again, where Trump gets somebody into a race against you and either knocks you out or you have to spend $45 million to beat them in the primary. Right. And so they, on the one hand, they look at him and they go, okay, this guy could really knock me out of politics. On the other hand, they say he's going to be gone in 2.5 to 3 years. So why would I take a risk now if he's going to be gone? And by the way, all of this, those are the sort of, what would you call it, day-to-day reasons for doing it. The big reason they don't do something about him is because they're moral vacuums. They're moral cowards. They took an oath to defend the Constitution, to defend the United States, and they are failing that oath, and they are morally corrupt. They're politically, I think it's a political dead end, by the way. I think once Trump is gone, this movement explodes into various pieces. And I think that I think they're being incredibly stupid. I think the smart move is to either get off the stage while this blows up, like your good buddy Marjorie Taylor Greene did, or to start to fight him.
Right.
But there's few and far Republicans, or few Republicans out there who are willing to do that because, you know, they are stuck in a political milieu that I don't think they understand very well. And the consequences have yet to land on the GOP the way I think they're going to in the next couple of years. And until that happens, until Trump's off the stage, they're going to, you know, they're doing this thing. Tillis, who in general is okay, but talking about Greenland, which he vehemently objects to us doing anything. Someone said, would you impeach Trump? Oh, no, I'd have a vote for the War Powers Act.
Right.
This is a guy who's leaving politics, Republican politics, but he still won't be an apostate because Trump is the high priest of MAGA, and these guys are terrified of him because of that.
Yeah, crazy.
That's it. It is. And I mean, this is the culmination of many years, and Democrats have a piece of this, where Congress gave up its power to the executive branch. Starting in the 50s, for many complicated reasons, over time, Congress gave it more and more of its power. And really that picked up in the last 20 years. Byrd would never have allowed this. Lyndon Johnson in the Senate would have been like, fuck off, we're fighting the president. Like, Congress has become supine. And until that changes, we're going to have this issue. Democrats, if they win the House, will not be supine. And they will fight, and it'll be completely different politics the minute that happens. I should point out, by the way, it's almost, unless he wants to do a military coup, Trump cannot stop a Democratic House from being set. Okay? He would literally have to put the army out on the streets to stop that. So when people freak out and they're like, oh my God, this is never going to come out of this. Realistically, if he loses the election, he's screwed. All the states where he might want to send, the ICE to to the polling booths are controlled by Democratic, the ones that matter, the swing states, are controlled by Democratic governors, Democratic secretaries of state. You would have the state police showing up and pushing ICE away and saying, no, you got to let people vote. If they managed to do it somewhere, judges would say, okay, fuck this. You have to redo the vote in that place, or you're going to extend it for 3 days to make sure people get to vote. Or we're going to demand the government give back the ballots. Like, we still have, unlike Nazi Germany and fascist Italy, our judiciary and our state level governments are not at all suborned. There's judges we hate. There's judges that have bad politics. Supreme Court kind of sucks, but there's no evidence that that overall the American judiciary is rubber stamping any of this. And I think there's a probably 70-30 chance that Trump loses the tariff case. And partly because, by the way, his own people have been saying incredibly stupid things about tariffs. Bessent said, an emergency, we're calling an emergency on tariffs to make sure there's not an emergency. Like, they are just shooting themselves in the foot on that case. I think that case or something similar to it that'll really be where things change.
Well,
more so than that'll set the stage for a midterm that really puts us on a different trajectory. There's going to be a lot of craziness. There's going to be violence. There's going to be really stressful times ahead. But in the medium run, I don't see a path for these guys to for Trump to hand on the presidency to somebody like him who can do what he's doing.
Let's talk about the violence right now. Speaking of, in Minneapolis and Minnesota, it seems to be just different than what we've seen in D.C., in California, in Illinois. Sure. And ICE is changing their tactics. Protesters are changing their tactics in kind of real time, what they're doing. But the numbers that they have put in, they have like 3,000 ICE agents to 600 police. It's not like they're fighting each other. We saw an unprecedented announcement from law enforcement together in Minneapolis today, I think it was. And you're seeing unity in the streets. I mean, I said something yesterday about, I just posted, we thought so much, and you and I and our friend Kevin and so many other people talked about worst case scenarios after Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And I feel like this woman, Renee Good, being murdered by ICE created a much more bigger backlash than the kid who assassinated Charlie Kirk. The government killed this woman. The reaction to it has been, I think we could all see the reaction to it. But more than anything else, it's been unity. It's been peaceful. It's been more people in the streets. There has been some violence, some unrest, of course, as a result. But what do you make of what's happening in Minneapolis, the killing of Renee Good, and the reaction of so many people in that city and around the country to what we're seeing?
So I think that the problem that the administration has is that there was no reason for her to be shot. And it was done by an officer who was violating all kinds of procedure. He stepped in front of the car. He's holding a camera, his camera phone up. Like, he's doing everything wrong and precipitates the shoot. And then, by the way, America hears him say, "You dumb bitch," after he's killed her. Yeah. And he has as much affect as if he slapped a mosquito. And I think, I can tell you, I know that reads very wrong to most Americans. When you show people the actual video, a significant majority blames it on him, right? People who see the video go, "Oh, fuck this. Like, it's not okay." And again, I think that gets at American political culture. Americans are not big fans of government. They're not. They don't like government. And so, you see a very clear, and you see it all over Minneapolis, a very clear sort of, we are going to put the boot on you and make you do what we want. And even a lot of conservatives hate that. And I'll tell you, I know people who are trying to sign up for civil disobedience classes. Volunteers are putting these classes together on how to be civil disobedient to ICE. Yeah. You cannot get into these classes.
Huh. Like, the demand for them is so high
in Minneapolis. Yeah. And remember, Minneapolis is a small city. It's easy to do Minneapolis. DC is a lot harder. They tried doing it. If you put 3,000 agents in DC, would it affect the city? Sure. But there's a million people here. right? If you tried in LA, it'd be laughed off. Ditto in Chicago, ditto in San Francisco. Like, they picked a small city
right,
with the idea that they would show their power. Again, they're trying to jawbone themselves into a dictatorship. So they're trying to show their power and push the city around. Their problem is they picked a city full of some of the nicest people in the world who also have like real grit.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Like, these are not people who they didn't, these are like Norwegians and Swedes and Somalis and whatever, whose people came here like out of some of the worst conditions in the world. And that's still in the culture. I know a lot of Minnesotans, and God, their accent's awful, but they are like tough, amazing people. And I think the Trump administration made a big mistake. By the way, they're making bigger mistakes by trying to indict the mayor of Minneapolis and trying to indict Waltz. Utterly stupid. It's so stupid. And
why is that? Why is that?
Go nowhere in the courts.
Why is that stupid?
Well, because they demonstrate their inability again. They demonstrate the limits of their power every time. I mean, somebody said to me, "Oh my God, they're indicting Waltz." I was like, "That's great. Have them indict everybody," because it just shows that they, the indictments go to court and get like tossed out immediately. Remember James Comey's indictment, dead already. Letitia James' indictment, one's dead, the other's dying. It's slow death. I mean, they just don't work. And DOJ, by the way, all kinds of people quit from their offices this week, last week, and the week before. They're gutting the arm of the government that they want to use to coerce Americans.
The resignations from DOJ, I didn't think there could be any more. What were they as a result of again? They
were the result that the Pam Bondi directed the Minnesota Justice Department offices to investigate Good's widow.
That's right. And instead of
these guys were like, and by the way, these guys were like Trump appointees, and they were like, "Fuck off! There's no way. Like, there's no way. I don't want my name anywhere near that." And that again gets at the problem, right? This is not a place where. I just read a great book. It's called The SS Officer's Armchair, and it's a book about how a guy, a very normal guy, a lawyer, ends up in Prague, helping run like the suppression of the Czechs and part of the final solution and everything else. And the book is really about the normality, the banality of evil. You aren't seeing a ton of those people in the U.S. You're just not. You're seeing tons of people quit or back out or refuse to deal with it or refuse to go along. And are we seeing gigantic protests? No, we're actually seeing something better. We're seeing that most people in the bureaucracy and in the sort of states and whatever are kind of like, you people are freaks. I don't want to touch this. So, for a state to work the way the Nazi Germany did or Italy did, you need the bureaucracy. You need the sort of elements of coercion in the state to go along. And in our country, they're really not. I mean, the head chaplain of the United States military, Catholic priest, said, "I worry about some attempt on Greenland because it would be immoral, and a bunch of soldiers would have to make a very difficult choice of disobeying orders because they're immoral." That's the head chaplain, the head Catholic chaplain of the U.S. military, saying like, this is bullshit and it's bad. And when you're not, the Catholic Church is not going along. Like there's really who is going along. I mean, even evangelical churches, are they sending out people to join ICE? No, they're not. Like, there's just not, we don't have that political culture. Maybe it changes. Maybe disaster ensues anyway, but I'm not seeing it. And I think that their reach is too far for what they can actually grasp. I mean,
you often cite history, and I so appreciate it. And I think all of the experts on authoritarianists of the past have been really helpful. Tim Snyder, Ruth Ben-Ghiat, so many others. But sometimes I feel like we get caught up in that. And Germany was different than in the 30s than America is in the 2020s, and the media atmosphere and the reaction to it. Jim Babowski says in the live chat, can Trump be so bad that he unifies people? Normally we need war, terrorism, disaster. I guess he's just such a fucking disaster. This is different. It isn't Germany. The hallmarks are terrifying. The similarities in what we're seeing in Orban and the way he's trying to copy and be an American gangster like Putin, we see it. But I think the reaction to it is what we have a hard time predicting. There's the reaction of the electeds, there's the reaction of our institutions, and there's the reaction of the public. And I feel like that's what's unpredictable. And to be honest, I think that's where a lot of my hope lies. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that so part of the reason we're in this fix is, they used to say, was it Moynihan or somebody used Daniel Patrick Moynihan, I think said that all politics is local, except in the modern era, the internet era and social media, all politics is actually national. And, you go to your school board meeting and people are screaming about pedophilia.
It's a great point. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so what's happened, we've had this phase change in our politics where everything is nationalized, everything.
Zohran Mamdani's run in New York City.
Exactly. Well, the thing that made me think of this today, I posted about it on Blue Sky, where some clown went to New York, said, I flew 10,000 miles to get here. And he's in New York. And he said, to say that Mamdani's not my mayor.
He flew 10,000 miles?
So he's
not even American?
Miles. And it's like, you fucking moron. If you live in Hoboken, Mamdani's not your mayor. Like, he's not your mayor unless you live in New York.
The fuck?
But it underlines this sort of weird serotonin-driven economy where people are like, yeah, I'm going to tell everybody that it'd be like me saying, the mayor of Paris is not my mayor. Of course she's not. I don't live there. My point being, that's where we are. And that has generated a ton of this right-wing reactionary insanity. But what it also does is it makes it impossible for this right-wing reactionary insanity to not be visible to everyone, right? Everyone sees what's happening in Minnesota. Everybody. Everyone sees what Trump is doing. Now, are they dulled by all the bullshit they see in the world? Sure. But it cuts both ways, and I'm pretty sanguine with the idea that the counter reaction to these people is going to be very brutal for them.
Yeah. I hope you're right about that. I'm
at core an optimist, but I think it's going to be rough. The next 2-3 years are going to be really rough. If Vance gets in, he's going to be total shit. He's going to be terrible. But I think that if we just avoid nuclear war or the complete destruction of American democracy, then, which I think are small percentage chances, then I think we will come back, and the lesson hopefully will be learned for a generation.
What about that bazooka, though? What about the value of the dollar? That could be a pretty bad thing.
One thing Trump has been quite sensitive to is the bond market. And I think that if they see that Europe actually, and again, this would be classic them with China. They tried to start a trade war with China. China kicked him right back in the nuts, and he stopped it.
Yeah, well, Scott Bessent is saying
the same thing happening here.
Scott Bessent is telling our foreign partners, don't retaliate. We've seen him do this before.
I mean,
what is he? Why would anybody?
These guys are going out there and saying, "Oh, the rules are thrown out, and we're going to force you to do things." But by the way, you can't hit us back.
It's weird.
I was calling it the Clady Williams approach to foreign policy. Do you remember this?
No.
Clady Williams ran against Ann Richards in Texas.
Oh yeah.
And his description, he said about rape. Well, if you got to deal with it, you might as well just sit back and enjoy it. And this is Bessent and Trump's approach to everything. We're going to rape you. You might as well enjoy it.
Yeah, gross. Well, no one's going to. No one's going to not retaliate. No one's going to enjoy it. Well, everybody is going to fight.
Europe doesn't want to. Europe also doesn't need much. They need help in Ukraine, and they need the U.S. to not seize their territory.
Yeah.
They're not asking for a lot. And I think, to me, the ultimate, the greatest, would be Trump imposes the tariffs on Europe over Greenland, and a week or two later, the Supreme Court comes in and says you don't have the authority to do that. That would be fantastic.
Then that's a possibility. It is.
Right. And by the way, I will tell you something that is, I don't know if it's secret or not, but I will tell you, the Trump people have been so caught up with all the other bullshit they've been doing that if they lose the authorities they're using to put tariffs on countries right now, there's a backup authority that they can try to use. That other authority, and I forget the exact name of it, but it takes tons of research and effort to do. And because they're so caught up with other bullshit, they've done none of the work. So they will not be able to flip around and use these other authorities they have for a while, for a long time. And it's going to make it very difficult for them. Really, like they're going to have to go case by case, do a bunch of legwork, do a bunch of paperwork, and then try to do it. And even then, there's no guarantee.
And they're not good at that. They're not good at governing.
They're terrible at that. They're the worst follow-through people ever. And by the way, like, a lot of this entails bureaucrats in the government who they fired. So, again, it's the classic thing. Like, they shot themselves in the foot by wrecking the government.
If everybody turns on them, if the right-wing podcasters turn on them, if the MAGA fever generally breaks, if nobody's going to rallies, if there's no grievance, that they can focus on, like, anytime a Democrat's in power, or some trans issue or something else, which they don't seem to have a real grievance. And if the rest of the country is seeing this destruction on a daily basis, an hourly basis, the way we're seeing it, I mean, what changes if the vast majority of us turn against him? People always focus on the next election, which I think is important, and we've already talked about that. But he's lost so much support. They've lost so much support, including on these immigration raids, which people do not like overwhelmingly, according to.
Yeah, Vance actually has worse numbers than Trump does. Like, not by much, but, Trump's at 37, 38. Vance is like 35, 36, which is really an achievement, because he's been around, but not that much. But his affect and the things he says are so, and his wife having another anchor baby is not going to change that much. Although I wish her nothing but the best in delivering the baby and everything else. But the sort of, I think that just what happens is they get blown out, and that's how we do things here. We do elections, and I think they just get completely blown out. The real thing would be if they somehow lose the Senate. And Peltola looks good in Alaska. Our friend Roy looks good in North Carolina. Ossoff looks good. It's not out of the realm of possibility. It would have been a year ago, by the way. Right now, Democrats are sort of inching in to really being competitive, take the Senate back.
Yeah.
If the Democrats take the House and the Senate, even if they just take the House, but if they take both, it's a whole different world. It's a whole different world. So that's what I think, where people should be putting their energy, resisting ICE and winning the midterms as dramatically and as catastrophically for the Republicans as possible.
Awesome. A great place to end it. I like that positive note. I like you tying it up that way, and I like you. Bill Boyle, and I like your cat. Milo?
Thank you. Milo.
Love it. Why Milo?
Yeah. We went through a bunch of different names.
Yeah.
My son and I had very strong opinions about these names.
Yeah.
My wife shot them down with a wave of her hand and a raised eyebrow. And then all of a sudden she was walking through a room and she said Milo.
I love it.
And that was kind of it.
She's such a boss. I love it. I'm happy for your family. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for everybody who watched live this later on the podcast tomorrow. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. Can't do it without you, and especially you, buddy. Thank you.
Asta, thank you.
All right. Bill Boyle, Bill B in D.C. Go follow him on Blue Sky. Go thank him. Member of our community, former caller of the show, and now a great guest, a regular guest. Always love hearing his perspective. You can watch that on YouTube or Substack or Facebook if you want. And all the links are in the show notes to me, to Bill, to everybody who is on the show, to John Carroll, who writes and performs all the music here. Go to johncarroll.org. We love him. All right, that's it. I'll talk to you, well, not tonight at the Hangout, and I may or may not have a show tomorrow because today is Ava's 21st birthday. I'm working for her today and tomorrow, and I'll be back at it on Friday and throughout the weekend. You can count on me. All right, thank you very much for allowing me to count on you. Bye.
Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you gotta stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You gotta stand up. That's right. You got to rise up, you got to stand up, you got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear and all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence, and even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense and you stand up, stand up. Point your rifle to defend your change would begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside. And listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.